Hello, I'm Aver, Hazel, or Kylie. You can just pick one, I don't care.
Hello, I am Lily.
And welcome to the From the Closet podcast. Today we are covering Avengers Endgame. Incredible that we're finally here. But yeah, obviously this podcast will contain spoilers for said movie. If you'd like to avoid them, there will be a link in the description below to the Just Watch page for this movie, where you'll be able to find links to every place you can rent, purchase, or stream this movie with price comparisons for renting and purchasing. For us here in the US, it's available for streaming on Disney+. Also in the description, you will find a link to our Patreon where you can vote on future episodes of this show, as well as get access to episodes before they release, as well as early access to episodes of our sister show, Off the Shelf, which is about books and is exclusive to YouTube and Patreon. As far as future episodes go, you can join us next week for Cruella and West Side Story, the 2021 version. We have previously covered the 1961 version. You can check that out in our playlist. You can also join us next month for Spider-Man Far From Home. Also in the description, you'll find a link to Anchor.fm, which is now Spotify for podcasters, which itself will have links to every place this podcast is on, as well as links to our Instagram and Twitter, where you can be notified when we release a new episode. But with all that being said, please get out of here if you would like to avoid spoilers, because we are going to start discussing the movie now. And oh boy, what a movie. I saw this in theaters twice. Once on opening day and then once literally the day after. So it was actually kind of a coincidence that it happened like that. My dad and I had made plans to see the movie the day after opening day. And then literally the day before opening day, a friend of mine, who was also planning to go see the movie with someone else, had that someone else cancel on them. So they called me up and was like, "Hey, you want to go see it?" And I'm like, sure. Why not? And my dad was kind of mad at me because, we go to the movie the next day and we sit there. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him that I had seen it the day before until the movie was over.
My gosh,
So yeah,
good movie. Even better the second time.
yeah, he was mad, but I mean, I wanted to see his reactions to the movie. And it's movies like this that make me miss going to the movie theaters cuz now, to be honest, I don't think I'm ever going to get another movie theater experience like what I got with this movie. Like the sense of community was so great with this movie. Like I I remember the reactions to pretty much everything that people had throughout this movie. Such a it was such a great experience, and you only get experiences like this when you have this much effort put in over the course of as many years as were put into this movie. Like the MCU started when I was 10 years old. Like Iron Man came out in 2008 before my birthday. So I was 10 years old when that movie came out. And then Endgame comes out when I'm 21 because it was also before my birthday. And it was just amazing. Like I have grown up with these characters, and I don't know, like there's something to it. There's something about it that really strikes a chord. I don't think it's the best Marvel movie. I've said before, I think Infinity War is better. But this movie is still incredible. It's still top 5, maybe top 3 MCU movies. But yeah, let's start with the actual content of the movie. We open with Hawkeye's family disappearing. Like he loses his entire family. He wasn't even in Infinity War. And so it's a good idea to open us on someone who wasn't present for the conflict. But like, holy shit, talk about a cold open.
Yeah, no, just everyone disappearing.
Yeah. So they kill off Hawkeye's family, right? Like, he's right there too. Like, he doesn't actually see it happen because his back was turned. But imagine, like, 1 second they're there, and then you turn around and they're gone, all of them.
Just like half the world.
Yeah, or entire universe. And then we get the Marvel logo, which I think what they did for this movie was really cool because what they did for the Marvel logo in this movie was all the scenes where there were um, characters who were snapped. They're just not there in the Marvel logo.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And also very haunting, especially when you have like no like they didn't do the intro music for this movie either. So yeah, then we go to the Avengers meeting where I think two important things happen. Um, where okay, I say we go to the Avengers meeting, but actually we go to Tony Stark in space, and then like I don't really think there's much to say about that. But
Tony
like the
Stark
Avengers meeting is the next
in
thing, and
space.
yeah, Stark and Nebula, which I get it was wholesome watching them play paper football. Um, it's a nice moment for Nebula's character because she tends to associate competition with like having to fight Gamora, and if she lost, she had a part of her body replaced, and she always lost. So like it's a nice moment to have not only a competition where like those kind of stakes aren't present, but also where she actually wins something for once.
And it's paper football.
Yeah, paper football instead of combat, which is what usually was the case. But yeah, we go to the Avengers meeting where pretty much everyone's there except for Hawkeye and well, I was gonna say Captain Marvel, but no, she was there too because something I have in my notes is when she sees that Fury is gone, like you can actually see like it, she actually there's a blink and you miss it moment of like grief that's on her face and then it just cuts away. I think the important thing though that happens during this meeting is we see the first interaction between Steve and Tony since Civil War. And it's like it's very very apparent that no, they have not made up. They have not yet put their differences aside and everything. Tony is still very much mad about the whole thing.
Yeah, and
And
it definitely shows.
yeah, and like here we also start getting the whole plan to go and get Thanos, get the stones back from him, and like undo everything. Of course, it takes a bit because they got to figure out where he is, and only Nebula knows. And she ends up telling them. They go there, they they find Thanos, they chop his arm off, they flip the gauntlet over, and there's no stones inside.
Because he
Thanos
fucking
just
destroyed him.
yeah. And for anyone who is wondering about what the Ancient One said about removing the stones disrupting the flow of time, the atoms count. That's really all there is to it. The atoms count.
Hmm. I
So
guess reduce the
technically, they haven't
atom.
been removed.
Yeah.
Yeah, technically, they haven't been removed from the universe. But yeah, so I do want to discuss the fact that they jump forward 5 years. I'm very, I'm actually very glad about like the fact that this wasn't a successful thing, and that the characters had to live 5 years in Thanos' universe, like in the world where they lost and Thanos won. I think it's a really, really good thing to have consequences in movies like this.
I
And
mean, I guess.
the the exact consequences of all of that is something that the MCU is going to go into in later properties that we will watch.
Hmm.
They don't really explore what half of the universe blinking out of existence for 5 years would really mean in the in this movie. They don't explore that at all, and it's not even just 5 years. It's 5 years and a couple of months, because Infinity War takes place in April, May 2018, and Endgame takes place in October 2023. So, which funnily enough is when we're recording this. Normally we would have recorded it in November.
Hmm.
But
That's
yeah,
that's a thing, I guess.
yeah. So I'm very glad that they didn't just give us a Control Z. So immediately after the 5 years later thing, we go to this little meeting, that this group therapy thing that Steve Rogers has started, and it's where we have our first gay character in the MCU. Um, Props to the director for choosing to be the one to act this out, and be the one to take all the heat from not actually hiring an LGBT actor. But I do want to point it out because it's there. It's our first LGBT character in the MCU, barring Loki, because they haven't actually confirmed it at the time of Endgame.
Loki is
But
just
yeah,
whatever he feels like.
yeah. And you get the line from Captain America saying, you got to move on, which comes back later when, he and Nat are talking, and, of course, they haven't moved on, and they can't. They're not ready. And plenty of people are starting to move on, like Tony, for instance. But yeah, we have Scott's escape from the quantum realm and his reunion with Cassie. Okay, so for starters, his escaping the quantum realm, the mouse opening the quantum tunnel, that's actually kind of inevitable. It's frickin' San Francisco. It's in a very dirty area. It was pretty much inevitable that the mouse would open the gateway. What's actually the very rare thing is that Scott was in the position to be able to take advantage of it. Stark says as much. It's like, you accidentally survived. It was a 1,000,000,000 to 1 cosmic fluke.
Yeah.
But yeah, I I do think that is kind of the 1 in 14 million chance that uh, Doctor Strange was talking about. And I'll get into Doctor Strange later. But yeah, uh, we see him running around the memorials to the vanished, and really hoping Cassie's name isn't there. But then he sees his name there, and it's yeah, everyone would think that he blipped because there was no one left to tell people that he was in the quantum realm. But Cassie doesn't get blipped, and I have to give props to Paul Rudd here, the guy who plays Ant-Man,
Mhm.
because how on earth do you act that scene? You have to act like a father who not only is coming to terms with the fact that he's missed 5 years of his daughter's life, but you have to mix that with the relief that your daughter is actually still alive. He acts that scene beautifully, and so does the actress who plays Cassie in this movie. And
Yeah.
I do have to give credit where credit's due. That is an incredibly well done scene. But yeah,
Pretty good.
yeah. So with Scott then meets up with the other Avengers, and they start hatching the plan of creating a time machine. So they need to go to Tony, because Tony's the one who's most likely to be able to actually make this work.
He says
It's a
no.
shame they don't know about it. It's the shame that they don't know about Fitz, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, Fitz could solve it in an afternoon. Then again,
Well,
so
I
is
mean,
can
the
Iron
thing
Man.
is, then again, here's the thing though. Fitz has already done it. Like, if we're talking about the timeline, Fitz has already done it.
Oh yeah, Fitz. Actually, yeah, main Marvel timeline. If the TV shows are canon, Fitz just had the knowledge that the Avengers needed this entire time and didn't say anything.
Yes. Well, I mean, they never asked.
I guess. I mean, to be fair, Fitz. I mean, Fitz has a family now, so
Yeah. And yeah, whatever. But I mean, the thing that I want to point out, okay, for starters, Tony has a kid now, and this is like it's what initially makes him not want to help, but of course, like the idea is planted in his head. And on top of that, if you look at the simulations that he's running, it's clear that he's tried. Um, it, it's clear that he's tried to figure this out before. Like he doesn't just figure it all out in one evening. But
the quantum
the
realm
thing
is
that I
what he
will
was
point,
missing.
yeah, I think maybe yeah, the quantum realm is what he was missing. But now, mind you, I do say that Tony is probably smarter than Fitz because Fitz figured out how to do time travel after already seeing that time travel was possible. Remember, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. traveled to the future using the monolith, and then they were able to travel back. So
Mhm.
he was only figuring out a way to recreate time travel, and the quantum realm was his solution. Scott only like experienced a change in his relative time. Tony actually figured out time travel. That is very, very different.
I mean, Scott basically said, "Hey, I think time travel is possible."
Yeah, that's basically what it is. Like Fitz knew it was possible, and then he figured out how to do it. Tony was like, "No, this shit is impossible," and Scott's like, "Maybe not," and then Tony figured it out.
Um, I mean, Jarvis said, "Oh, th- you cannot synthesize this," and then he synthesized it.
Yeah, by being smart and doing it. But yeah, after Tony rejects them, they go to Bruce Banner, who has now become Smart Hulk.
Also, I love
I
how
do kind.
the subtitles now label him as Smart Hulk.
Yeah, I love that. It was a fan name at first, but then they were like, "Yeah, fuck it, we'll adopt it." Yeah, but I
Amazing.
don't know. I think it's fun. I think the whole idea of Smart Hulk is fun. I just wish we had seen the process instead of, having it cut out. But whatever,
That's
I
the
guess.
entirety of the Hulk right there in the MCU. We just see him. You know,
Yeah.
that Thor movie. Yeah, we just see him on another planet. Hulk is just always there.
I mean, we saw him on another planet, but we at least got an explanation for how he got there and like why he stayed there and everything. This is kind of the culmination of Bruce Banner's character arc. Like the whole idea of the Hulk is kind of like a metaphor for like an explosive outburst disorder. I don't know what it's actually called, but um like there's also just the element of the fact that the Hulk and Banner are two different entities, and the Hulk, like Bruce Banner kept treating the Hulk as something to get rid of. That was part of the plot of the entire Incredible Hulk movie that was extremely bad.
Mhm.
But yeah, like they go to him. Obviously, it's outside of his area of expertise. He's a fucking biochemist.
But he
But
tries
yeah,
and
yeah,
fails.
he certainly does try. But yeah, they They also go to New Asgard and they get Thor, who has really let himself go. He's clearly suffering from both depression and PTSD in this movie.
So this is what happens
And
to
like,
fallen gods.
yeah, I mean, who can blame him, honestly? Like, first he loses his mother, and he thought he lost his brother, but then it turned out he was alive, but
Repeat
then
the
he
cycle two
dies
times.
anyway. Yeah, he also loses his father, his entire home, and then Thanos shows up, kills his brother, kills Heimdall, and kills half his people, and then the snap happens, and half of what's left after Thanos killed half of them the first time, they die too.
Damn, that's just rough.
And And the thing that makes this even worse is Thanos would have gotten the chance to win if Thor hadn't decided to savor the victory. He, in his mind, he let Thanos win.
I also like earlier in the movie when Thor killed Thanos, he said, "I went for the head."
Yeah, and it's also something you can appreciate, like in the final battle against Thanos. Every time you see Thor swing the axe towards Thanos, he's aiming for the head.
Always going for that head. Also, now we mention it, we have to mention I have seen so many memes in this. Like, so many moments in this movie that I know will end up becoming memes.
Yeah, and some of them I feel like shouldn't have become memes. Like, Don't Give Me Hope really shouldn't have become a meme, in my opinion, because now, like, people treat it as a silly scene when it's supposed to actually be serious.
I mean, you can't say, sh- this thing shouldn't become a meme because that's not how memes operate.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, to me, I don't like that it became a meme. I also really don't like the "no, I don't think I will" became a meme, but whatever.
Things just become memes. It's the
So
collective
yeah,
conscious, not just one person.
I know. I just, uh, I mean, typically it does start with one person posting the screenshot in response to something, and then it balloons into a much bigger thing.
I mean, either the collective conscious agrees with it, and that puts it in their minds to, make more memes, or it just dies immediately. And
Yeah, but
that's the
like I
way.
said, it always starts with one person.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, they start making the plans on where and when to go to collect all the Infinity Stones, because Tony does figure out time travel. Blah blah blah. We also like have some really nice family dynamics going on, like Pepper, like acknowledging that, like Pepper knowing Tony enough to know that if he just stopped, he wouldn't be able to sleep at night because
Yeah.
he actually can help. He's in a position to do so, and his conscience would weigh on him from the very beginning, like of Tony Stark's character. Like the first movie is him seeing that his weapons are being used in ways that he didn't intend, and he works towards setting it right. That's the goal of Iron Man 1. And like obviously everything goes to shit. Like Iron Man 1 happens, and then Iron Man 2 was mostly irrelevant. But in Avengers, he sees that his world is no longer safe for him, and like it develops into PTSD. And by the end of Iron Man 3, he's in a healthy place. Like he he's moved past his trauma, but he's continuing being Iron Man because the Avengers need him. And then Age of Ultron happens. Like Wanda gets into his head, and like, yeah, It's a mess. And then Civil War. Oh God.
Yeah,
But yeah,
so Tony
they start make
is in place.
yeah, they start making plans on where and when to go back. And one thing a lot of people seem to take issue with this movie,
Hmm.
and it's because they haven't been paying attention, is that Nebula doesn't tell like the rest of the team about the fact that a sacrifice is required for the Soul Stone. But she doesn't know. All she knows is that Thanos killed Gamora.
I mean, that was one of the things that they brought up in this movie about the person wasn't joking, because then they pieced it together.
Yeah,
Thanos,
like
why
even
Gamora
with
never
that
came back.
scene, yeah, even with that scene where like Natasha and Clint piece it together, people still miss it.
Because they weren't listening.
Yeah, Nebula doesn't know the sacrifice is required. Another interesting thing to point out in this like scene where they're planning everything, the team doesn't know that Doctor Strange wasn't actively like positioned at the New York Sanctum until 2017. They actually think they're going back to 2012 and they are looking to find Doctor Strange.
I do love the timekeeper. I forgot their name. Was just like, you're 5 years too late.
Early.
Oh yeah, early.
Yeah, because Avengers was in 2012 and he's not active until 2017, so it's 5 years too early, which is a funny coincidence because it's like 5 years was the time jump from Infinity War to Endgame, and there was also a 5 year difference between Avengers and the end of Doctor Strange.
Huh.
But yeah, so another question that a lot of people asked during the Doctor Strange movie was if there was a Sanctum Sanctorum in New York City, then why the fuck weren't they helping out during Avengers 2012? And it turns out we literally see in this movie that they were helping out in that battle. We just didn't see them in the Avengers movie.
Because reasons.
Well, they hadn't been introduced.
They
But
can't
yeah,
the camera
let's
just didn't
talk
want to
about
pan to them.
yeah. So now we got to talk about Doctor Strange's plan because holy shit, is it incredible? And holy shit, do people not understand what happened? Okay, so his plan was, for starters, he had to give the time stone to Thanos willingly. If it was taken from him by force, then there is no way that the Ancient One would be willing to give Bruce Banner the time stone. But because he did give it willingly, the Ancient One knows that he saw the only future in which they could win.
Hmm.
And then on top of that, his plan goes even further. Like, okay, for starters, he planned out all the shit that they did in the time heist. Probably, it's debatable whether or not Loki escaping was planned, but I mean, even then, it wasn't that big of a deal. They got all the stones back. They had the snap. There was the whole thing with Nebula and like Thanos and Gamora coming to 2023 from 2014. Like he planned all of this.
Hmm.
And
Wait, I actually
the idea
forgot
was
something from the movie.
hold on. The idea was once Hulk snapped his fingers, Strange clearly this is just what you can infer from the movie. This isn't me speculating. Strange went to other sorcerers. He had to in order for this portal scene to work. He went to the other sorcerers, and the whole plan was to gather everyone together to fight Thanos' army. he saw all of this, and
Huh.
he saw that Tony would sacrifice himself to win the battle.
That's I mean, despite him seeing all of it, how would he know that all of like this would be this timeline and not just like something else would happen? Because he didn't have
Because
direct control.
he looked into every he looked into so many different possible futures, and he knew how to orchestrate events so that they would happen the right way.
Hmm. I mean, still a little bit weird.
Yeah. I think it's very incredible writing there. Like, he had to give the stone up in order for this all to work. Like, it's great. Just another aspect to this time heist thing that they're doing. We are revisiting 3 movies here. All right, we're revisiting The Avengers, we're revisiting Thor: The Dark World, and we're revisiting Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And something I do like is that they don't like throw any shade towards Thor: The Dark World. I'll rag on the movie a lot, but like you're allowed to like it, and I don't know, maybe it probably would have felt weird to throw shade at it, especially when like it's a very important moment in time for Thor's character. Like, for starters, this is the day he lost his mother, and he gets to have that final goodbye. It's really, really good wish fulfillment. Like, how many people have wished they could have that last moment with someone? Like, just one chance to say goodbye. They
I
don't
was wondering
like
something.
life doesn't tend to work out like that.
Well, yeah. Um, sorry, you just kept going on, but how did everyone get the Tesseract back
What do you
from?
mean?
Well, because Loki got the Tesseract and he teleported away, right?
Yeah,
So how did they get that Infinity Stone?
they went further back in time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like Tony and Steve, they went
Oh,
back
that's
to
right.
1970. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, okay, now I understand.
Yeah, so back on the Thor stuff. I also really love the scene where he reaches out to get Mjolnir and it comes back to him. And you have the line, I'm still worthy. And I think that's important for anyone else who's suffering with depression to hear. Yes, you are still worthy. Even if you failed as spectacularly as someone like Thor has, you're still worthy of love, you're still worthy of acceptance, and you're still worthy of success.
And a hammer, a magical hammer too.
Yeah, and a magical hammer. You are definitely worthy of that too.
You can pick up at your nearest hardware store.
We also have, okay, just one other thing. In the 2012 portion of this movie, I do love the scene where Cap steps into the elevator with all the Hydra guys. It's like, it's mirroring Captain America the Winter Soldier. There was a very similar scene in that movie. But
Oh
whereas in
yeah,
that movie, he beat the shit out of all of them. In this movie, he relies on deception. And I loved it so much,
I love how
especially since it came
surprised
straight out of the
everyone
comics.
was when he said that.
Yeah. So yeah, I also really love this scene of like Captain America fighting Captain America. The America's ass joke is funny. Um, and yeah, we also have Loki escaping, which of course leads to the TV show on Disney Plus that we will get to eventually. Um, Shortly after, though, we have Tony and Steve going to 1970, and the very first thing we see is the final Stan Lee cameo. You know, one movie was going to be his last, and it
This is it.
it's very fitting that it was this movie.
I wonder if
Of course,
so like obviously they were writing the next movie, Spider-Man 2. I'm just going to say
Far From
2.
Home.
But I'm wondering if they written a cameo for him before he died.
It's possible, but who knows? I mean, I guess we'll never know, to be honest. But yeah, I think it's rather good for Tony Stark's character that they do go back to 19. Well, good for Tony Stark and good for Steve Rogers, because when they go back to 1970, um, like Tony gets to have his one last conversation with his father that he never got to have. And it's clear that like sometime between Civil War and Infinity War, or maybe even between Civil War and Endgame, he kind of came to terms, like he came to understand his father a bit more. Because like if you remember in Civil War, like when he's talking about the fact that Bucky killed his parents, he says he killed my mom. Doesn't mention his dad at all.
Yeah, it's actually interesting to hear him say, you know, because he did at one point resent his father, but then he started to
Yeah.
understand.
So the other thing to point out about the trip to 1970 is Jarvis. Jarvis, we have a human playing Jarvis, and it is the same person who played him in the Agent Carter TV show. Now, I am here to tell you that I still think that Agent Carter is canon to the main universe. I still think all the Marvel television stuff is canon to the main universe. But if it's not, this is a very good hint towards multiversal shenanigans, and it would technically be the first one. Although we previously thought something that was in the next movie was the first hint towards multiversal shenanigans. But we'll have to see, because we still don't know how they're going to handle the Marvel television stuff. We're not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, they could just not handle it.
They're going to. But yeah, so we have, moving on to, there's not really much to say about like the Guardians of the Galaxy tie-ins. I don't really have much to say about like Thanos and Gamora and Nebula and all that stuff. But honestly, I did want to talk about
want to save it for Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
I still haven't seen that movie.
Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is actually when a lot of the characters got their plot resolved. So, I think I want to save a lot of like their character discussions for then.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. And I'm also hearing just a lot of stuff about how some of the cast members are leaving. I think I've heard Dave Bautista and Bradley Cooper are planning to leave.
A little bit sad that you just won't see their characters again.
Maybe. It may just be that they get different actors, but like replacing the voice of Rocket is going to be weird, and replacing Drax is also going to be weird if they do go that route.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's going to be weird no matter what.
But yeah, something that's happening at the same time as this is the whole scene with Black Widow and Hawkeye on Vormir. For starters, just before they head towards Vormir, Rhodes tells them to watch each other's six, and as a channel I really love, Cinema Wins, As they have pointed out, they take that to the most insane extremes. I mean, good God, they fight to the death, and the winner loses.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's kind of what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, fight to the death. Fight to see who dies.
Yeah. And unfortunately, like Black Widow dies. Like I would say it's the end of her character arc, but technically that's in a movie that hasn't happened, or that's in a movie we haven't watched yet, but the events have already happened. It's weird.
Because they couldn't
But
release
yeah,
that movie earlier.
yeah, they wrap up her story really nicely where like her whole character has been about making amends for the things that she's done in her past. And I feel like, when you're sacrificing yourself to save the lives of half the people in the universe, I feel like you've redeemed yourself at that point. Fully.
Yeah.
I feel like there's nothing anyone can say against you there. And of course, like, Hawkeye, he needs to live, not only to see his family again, but to redeem himself after becoming Ronin. Like, he did go off the deep end. Who can blame him, honestly? But he still did. And he made a lot of enemies when doing so, which will come back to bite him.
And
But
I'm
yeah,
guessing we're
we'll
going to be
see.
seeing that.
Yeah, we are. But yeah, I'm just looking through my notes to see. Okay, I actually don't have anything else until the final battle,
Hmm.
because there wasn't really much to say with like, okay, after that, like everyone they come back to the present, and you have the whole sequence of like, uh, them deciding who's going to snap their fingers, and like the conversation about how like the radiation is mostly gamma, so it should be Bruce to snap his fingers because he'd be the most likely to survive. And he does survive, but you can see later that it really fucking hurt him. Like in the scene where he's sending Cap back in time to like return the stones and the hammer.
Hmm.
Like you can see in that scene, he's got his arm in a sling and it looks burned.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure we do see him later, like with that arm healed. That'll
Later, as
probably.
in later in the MCU, in a later property,
Yeah.
yes. But yeah. So the next thing I have here is like Cap lifts Mjolnir. What a scene! Like 10 out of 10 scene right there. I remember my theater both times. Everyone was cheering when that happened. Like they set this up 4 years prior. Arguably even more if you want to trace it all the way back to Thor 1. Because, like, the fact that he can actually use Thor's lightning, that's something that relates back to Thor 1. And some people call that a plot hole, that he can use the lightning because they watched Thor Ragnarok, but they clearly haven't paid attention to Thor 1.
Tisk tisk.
Yeah. Pay attention, people. Like, if you're going to criticize a movie, you make sure you get your facts right.
Do it right.
Yeah. But, yeah. Incredible scene, and so is On Your Left. Like, first of all, On Your Left is a callback to Winter Soldier.
Perfect.
Where, like, Cap did the same thing to Sam. But, yeah, we get the reveal of everyone. They actually do show pretty much every important character who was dusted. Like, it's to the point where like you think about someone and then they show up on screen. It's it's really well done, and
What about
the
that
fact that
Spider-Man? Oh, Spider-Man. What about Black? Oh, there's Black Panther.
yeah, it's so good. I love that scene. And then like they cap that scene off with like Captain America finally saying the tagline of the Avengers franchise. They fucking waited like 20 plus films to do it, but they finally gave us Avengers Assemble. It's implied he said it in Age of Ultron, but they cut him off and rolled the credits right before that.
Avengers, let's get avenging.
Yeah.
It's avenging time.
Sure. That
You know, I just
but
loved it
yeah,
in this movie when Captain America said, it's time to avenge, and he just avenged all over the place. I had
um
to.
I also love that they brought in like Pepper in an Iron Man suit, which for the record she's technically called Rescue. Um
Huh.
so thought that was neat. It's a thing from the comics. She hasn't yet returned in the MCU, and I don't know if she ever will, but we'll see. So we have two Peter reunions I want to talk about because there are two characters named Peter here. So we have Peter Parker's reunion with Tony Stark, which is a really nice scene. We also
Yeah.
have Peter Quill's reunion with Gamora, which is a weird scene because it's not the Gamora he knows. It's a Gamora from 9 years in the past.
It's, also now I mean, I knew this happened, but I had no idea how Gamora from 9 years in the past made it their way into present day. Now I know.
Yeah, it's a very interesting way that that worked out. Also, like the present day Nebula killed past Nebula, and people are like, "Wait, why doesn't that erase her from existence?" And it's like you don't understand the rules of time travel here.
Eh, they did kind of explain the rules of time travel a little bad.
Yeah, I mean, I said it before, and I'll say it again. Like, Agents of Shield does follow Endgame's rules for time travel, and it explains them better.
Though I will admit, they did have more time in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to explain it.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, yeah, we have that scene. I also love how Nebula says your choices were him or a tree, which implies that Drax was not an option.
And the tree was.
Yeah, apparently. Groot would
Actually,
have been better than Drax.
you know what? I just thought about that because when I heard that, I just thought, oh yeah, it's either him or nothing. But I actually forgot about Groot's existence when I first watched that.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, another thing that some people didn't like, was that Hope and Scott didn't have a reunion. But when you think about it, why should they? They didn't spend 5 years apart. Scott was in the quantum realm for 5 hours. Like, as far as they were concerned, because remember, Hope was blipped, as far as they were concerned, they just saw each other a few hours ago.
That is true. Yeah. They,
So, of course, they're not going to have like a big reunion. They didn't need one.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
was it? I mean, for Scott, I feel like it'd be more like a day.
yeah, maybe a day.
But I mean, yeah, you are right. It wasn't it wasn't 5 years. That's for sure.
Yeah. And then we have like loads of other scenes here. We see kind of the first hint at how powerful Wanda really is. They're going to expand on that even more. but she damn near kills Thanos without the stones. And the only reason like he doesn't die there is because he aims like he tells his ship to aim the guns at her. Like Wanda is seriously crazy powerful, and she's barely begun to tap into her power yet. In what we've seen,
There is one
um,
thing that I don't understand about this movie.
what's that?
Why is there a Nebula network? Why can
I
two
mean,
nebulas connect to each other?
it's weird. Like she's got a lot of weird technology replacing parts of her body, so it's just something I don't care about.
It's the Nebula network. It's like Street Pass with nebulas.
Yeah.
Nebula passing.
We also have like in this fight scene, we also have activate instant kill, which is a payoff from Spider-Man: Homecoming. So that was nice to see.
I'm
It kind
sorry.
of turned him into Doc Ock.
Yeah, no, I was about to say, like, I'm sorry, Spider-Man fucking turning into Doc Ock right there.
Yeah, but I don't know. I thought it's cool enough. Uh,
Actually, funny
then we
story.
have Captain
My,
Marvel's
hmm?
entrance,
Oh yeah,
and
Captain Marvel.
a lot of people will say that there were cheers when Thanos punched her in the face with the Power Stone. I can tell you, as someone who lived in the South, or who lives in the South, and saw the movie in theaters twice in the South, once on opening day, my theater cheered a lot more when she entered and destroyed his ship. And there were no cheers when he punched her in the face. There were laughs when he headbutted her and she just stood there.
Um, I do wonder if it's like, and this is just assuming what these other people are saying is true. They could just be lying off their head. But if it is true, it could be the difference between the people that see it day one before the and the people that see it like 2 weeks later. But I don't know.
Maybe. I have watched a number of audience reactions too, and I didn't see people laughing at it either. So I
I
don't
mean,
know.
that's
Sorry,
just
not
assuming
laughing. I
that.
didn't see people cheering at that scene either.
Yeah, I mean that's just assuming that it is true. Could just be the difference between day one and the people that just see it like, oh yeah, Endgame, yeah, sure, why not?
And to be clear, I don't particularly like Captain Marvel as a character. Now, maybe that will change when I watch the Marvels, but we'll see. We will certainly have to see. But
I
there
didn't
is
really
a
like,
point in this.
yeah, I didn't really like her in this movie. She was just there. She was there, used her
Yeah,
powers. Not, and I don't really know how they could have, given her any other role in this movie, but it's just felt a little awkward.
yeah. I mean, they they explain that like she's out there helping other planets, like in the universe, which is a good thing because otherwise, they would have no one pretty much. Like
Yeah,
Rocket and Nebula are involved with this mission that's like based on Earth, so they don't even have the Guardians of the Galaxy.
yeah. I
They
mean,
just have they just have Captain Marvel. But yeah, there is one scene though that happens very shortly after
hmm.
Captain Marvel enters that we have to talk about, and it's the girl power scene. I don't like it. I I know a lot of people will come at me with the torches and pitchforks for saying that, but it's not a good scene. It doesn't work in the context of the movie. How are you okay? how do you expect me to believe that it happened in universe? Like, there's a girl power scene in an Infinity War that I really like. You know, Wanda gets in a bit of trouble because Proxima Midnight is literally about to kill her, and like Natasha and Okoye show up to save her. Like, I think that's a really good scene. But this is ridiculous. It feels completely out of place. Like
What is?
I'd be fine if it were fewer women who like showed up to help Captain Marvel, which, mind you, she didn't even need the help. She's Captain Marvel. Like, she has the power to blitz through all of those fucking faceless enemies. But when the fact that it was literally every single female character on the hero's side who was present, like every single one showed up to help Captain Marvel, it stretches the suspension of disbelief to the point where it snaps entirely.
Especially as is Captain Marvel,
Yeah,
who is not really known by many people.
yeah, that's the other thing. In fact, pretty much nobody knows her.
Like, let's say Pepper, for instance. Many of the Marvel characters know Pepper. Captain Marvel, though?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, it is not a believable scene, and I hate it. And it's unfortunately grifters who are anti-women will use that scene and say that, oh, there's tons of scenes in the MCU like this, when it is just that one. Like,
Yeah.
there are girl power scenes in other things, but none of them are anywhere close to this level of out of place cringe. None of them are anything like this. All
But,
the other girl power scenes in the MCU, they work. This one doesn't.
of course, later on the fighting happens.
Yeah, yeah, fighting happens, blah blah blah. Uh, honestly, there's not too much to say about the rest of the fight scene. Like,
Thanos
the
gets
Avengers
the
win because
stones.
Tony, yeah, Thanos gets the stones, Iron Man takes them back, he snaps, and like
Nothing
they win.
happens.
Yeah. Now, interesting thing, we have Iron Man's funeral scene, which it is a really rough scene to deal with. But one thing I want to point out in the recording
Hmm.
that he had, he says, if you had told me 10 years ago that we weren't alone, let alone to this extent, I wouldn't have the blah, blah, blah. Who cares what the rest of the quote was? 10
Hmm.
years ago was 2013. And that was after Avengers. So, Tony, you already knew you weren't alone.
I mean, um, Tony Stark, bad at math.
Yeah, maybe.
I
Even
mean,
though
to
that
be
doesn't
fair,
really
he
make
was about
sense,
to go
because,
into time travel. He wasn't concerned about the timeline at that moment.
yeah.
He was
So,
about to
another
break the
thing, too,
timeline. He didn't care about it.
yeah. So, another thing here to point out in Tony Stark's funeral is there was a teenager behind, or someone who looked like they were in their teen years, behind Wanda, Rhodes, and there was some other person in, like, there were three people standing in front of this
Hmm.
teen looking guy. But that guy is the kid from Iron Man 3.
Oh, damn. He grew up.
Yeah. I mean, it's been 10 years in universe since Iron Man 3. So, yeah, he was there. I just wanted to point that out. There's also just a scene a little bit after where Morgan is talking to Happy, and she says she wants a cheeseburger, which is a callback to Iron Man 1, because that was the first thing Tony wanted when he made it back to the U.S. From being captured. He wanted a cheeseburger.
Wanted that damn cheeseburger. I love how he said like your father liked cheeseburgers.
Yeah, and then we go into the scene of um, Bruce preparing to send Cap back in time to return the stones and the hammer. And importantly, there's a scene like there's a bit of dialogue in there where Bruce reveals that when he snapped his fingers, he tried to bring back Natasha, and it didn't work.
So even the
I feel like
power of
it's
all the
kind of
five Infinity Stones can't bring back someone from the dead.
yeah. Um, So yeah, Cap returns the stones and Mjolnir. A lot of people want to see a presentation of how he did that and what exactly went on when he went back in time, like even further to be
Mm-hmm.
with Peggy. But I mean, I'd be okay if we never get that special presentation, but I do want it.
I mean, I don't think it's needed. I mean, to get it would be cool, but um, for I mean, we know what happened, and I don't think
Yeah.
knowing exactly what happened will change the fact is what happened.
The thing that there are some things that people are a little unclear on, and
Hmm.
to be fair, I do kind of get this one. It's kind of unclear whether or not he's in the main timeline and there's two Captain Americas at the same time. But even if that's not the case, and if like he lives in a branched reality, uh, there would still be two Captain Americas in that reality.
Hmm.
So there's that, and then there's the question of how he got the shield that he gave to Sam and like passing the torch on. Because if you remember, the shield was destroyed in the battle against Thanos. Um,
Yeah.
I'm I'm just comfortable with the explanation that he went to Wakanda and got them to make a new one. Um, like that, I don't know.
That
It's
was
my
something I
personal take.
was
Like he,
wondering about is how, like, if he traveled back in time, how did he end up going back to the main branch of the timeline?
I mean, he knows Scott, so he likely could just go to Scott, and Scott could take him to Hank Pym, and blah blah blah.
Hmm.
Who cares? But yeah, that's the
Yeah.
end of my notes. But I I do love how this movie, like, okay, it wrapped up a number of characters' character arcs. Like, let's start with Tony. Like his whole thing, we talked a bit about it earlier, but like he finally his story goes from being he goes from narcissism to true altruism. And then like Steve's is kind of different. He starts being very altruistic, but his story is one of integrity in the face of ideology. And like in Winter Soldier, we see him lose his faith in the American government. And then we see him drop the role of Captain America in Captain America Civil War because he may have held on to his integrity in like defending Bucky, but he still he still sacrificed his friendship with Tony in order to preserve his friendship with Bucky. And he would be viewing this as doing a horrible thing. And then like we have this movie, he lifts Mjolnir, which is just incredible scene, worth mentioning again. And the
Hmm.
music in both that scene and in the On Your Left scene, music is incredible. Alan Silvestri did a fantastic job, which is to be expected. He also did the music for Avengers 1, and maybe 2 as well, but I can't remember. But yeah, like he does everything for other people, and it's not until the end of this movie where he finally does something for himself. And I think
Taking
it's fair to say
Iron
at this
Man's
point,
advice.
he's, yeah, at this point, he's earned it. I don't
So,
think anyone would feel any different.
Yeah, Captain America's old now.
Yeah. Um, they wrapped up Black Widow for the most part. Um, and yeah, I don't know. For me, like this movie is very emotional. It's emotional for a lot of people. Because like this is a movie that was a decade in the making. Like people grew up with these characters, and I won't name any names, but there are some people who will laugh at people who cried over events in this movie. It's a very dickish thing to do. These characters mean a lot to so many people because they grew up with them.
I mean, I can't
And
say that I cried, but
yeah, but I mean, you didn't watch Iron Man when you were like really young, and you didn't follow this franchise all the way through like, a lot of people did.
I'm
But you're also
probably
not the
say
type of person.
I would be a little bit too young when Iron Man first came out.
Yeah, I think you would have been like what, 5?
What you said that you were wait, how old are you again?
I was 10 because this was
No, like
before
how
my
old are you
birthday.
now? I forgot our age gap.
Oh, I'm 26.
So yeah, more than 5 years. So yeah, I would have been 5 or less. So
Yeah.
I wasn't
Uh,
even going to
Probably not.
kindergarten. Probably not the best movie for me. I don't even remember it if I did see it.
Yeah. But like even if like a little bit later in life you started watching these movies, like you still would have grown up with these characters. Like let's say, I don't know, around the time of Captain America the Winter Soldier. That was in 2014. Let's say you watched everything up to then and then you kept up. Like I still think this movie would be really emotional for you at that point in time.
I will
Um
admit, I mean, it's not. It would probably be harder to watch all of the movies then than it would be now.
Yeah, it used to be a lot harder. I would say it is a lot more of a daunting task now because there's a lot more content, but it's a lot easier to actually get a hold of the content. For a while, it was mostly all on Netflix, but then Disney Plus came along and made it easier. And it's still not
Hmm.
quite the easiest it could be. We still need Far From Home and No Way Home to drop on Disney Plus, but yeah, I this
I mean, there was
movie.
a point in time where you had to buy all of the movies just to watch them.
I mean, no, you could always rent them from like libraries and
I mean,
Redbox and shit.
okay, fair enough. Though libraries, I don't think a lot of people do that because you don't hear about a lot of people doing that. Redbox, though, I mean, Redbox was at its peak back then, so sure.
I mean, it's other people's loss if they don't use libraries to their advantage, in my opinion.
I mean,
But
yeah.
yeah, libraries tend to have a catalog of movies you can check out, so you know, use them.
I mean, a lot of people
Like, come
don't
on,
like
people.
libraries because, they'll just forget to return. You know, it's a busy life we live in.
Yeah, but I think it's incredibly well done. Like honestly, and it's the same. The directors of this movie are the same directors who did Infinity War, and they also did Civil War. Uh,
A lot of wars
so
here.
yeah, like obviously they teased Loki, that TV show that we're gonna get later. We're gonna be dealing a lot with the fallout from this movie and I guess technically the fallout from Infinity War and this movie, because it really is a two-parter thing. Um, we're going to be dealing a lot with the fallout as we're watching future MCU properties. So I guess be prepared for that, Lily.
Yeah.
We are finally about to start Phase 4 in January. It's still a bit off. It's still a bit of ways away because this was supposed to be cut. Like we were supposed to do this movie in November, and it's gonna like for those of you listening, like obviously this episode's releasing in November, but like we still got to get through Spider-Man: Far From Home, which I guess would kind of be the epilogue uh, to the Infinity Saga.
Hmm.
But
Definitely
yeah,
a lot there.
most certainly. But yeah, we're gonna have to get into all of that other stuff later. I've been holding off talking about Wanda's character arc because we're gonna be dealing with that pretty soon.
Yeah, I know he said we're going to
But
get more
yeah,
than an hour, but barely that. Because I do think
yeah,
we
I
don't
mean,
really have that much more to talk about.
yeah. Well, I think the only reason that we even like got it to be around this short is because I was kind of rushing through a lot of points, just because I didn't want this episode to be 3 hours long, and I
Yeah.
kind of didn't want to. I kind of really didn't want to split it into two parts, even though I was prepared to have to.
Hmm.
But thankfully, we didn't have to. Um, I do love this movie. I want to stress that. I really do love it. I just think Infinity War's better. It's still top three.
As for me, I mean, it's a good movie. I don't have any emotional attachments to it. Because I'm not, I mean, I'm invested in Marvel, don't get me wrong, but I'm not that invested.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for the podcast, I don't think you would just continue watching the MCU as everything comes out.
I mean, if the okay, I'll say this. If the podcast stopped here, I would probably still go watch some of the movies with my friend. I do think that's probably the only way I would still watch. Is that, and I just think about it, it's like I have a few hours. I can just go to Disney Plus and watch a Marvel movie I haven't seen.
I imagine you would probably watch, like, if any of the Agents of Shield characters return. I imagine you would want to watch the
I
stuff
have
that
too
they
much
return
investment
in.
there. Yeah, I have way too much investment in Agents of Shield to just
Yeah,
not. See, that's the thing though.
yeah.
Marvel, I don't have an emotional attachment to. Agents of Shield specifically, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, binge that series. How can you not?
Yeah, like seriously, if you guys haven't watched Agents of Shield, please go watch it. It is so good. Like I know you have a lot more time now in Phase 5 than you did in Phase 4. Like Marvel was pumping out shit constantly during Phase 4. So I don't blame you for not watching it during that time. But they've really slowed down for Phase 5. You have
And
time,
I mean,
and it's
if
such
I
a good
can
show.
binge it, if I can binge the entire series, like season by season every month, you can do it at like your own leisure.
Yeah. And it's a genuinely good show, especially seasons 4, 5, 6, and 7.
God, the ending, a real tearjerker there.
But yeah, whew. But yeah, I guess look forward to Spider-Man: Far From Home, and you can also look forward to next week us doing Cruella and West Side Story 2021. Um, but yeah, with that being said, Lily, go ahead and get into the critic ratings.
I will gladly. So IMDb gives it a 8.4 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes gives it a 94%, and 90% of Google users like this movie. And since I can conveniently see the actual Google rating, Google audience rating summary is a 4.7 out of 5.
All right, what's the Rotten Tomatoes audience score?
0%, I'm kidding, 90%.
Yeah, there would be no way it was 0.
I wonder if there's any
Uh,
actual 0. Oh, God. So you know how you go
I'd be
into,
interested to see that.
no, do you know how you go into, the Rotten Tomatoes website and you see, like, the movies that are coming out and what their score is?
Yeah,
Five Nights at Freddy's. Oh, God. Well, but
I don't I don't know why they are making a movie of that, but all right.
I mean, why are
Um,
they not gonna make a movie about the plushies at Hot Topic?
Anyway, I'm giving this movie a 9.3.
8.7. I can
All
absolutely
right.
recognize
Well,
Peak when I see it.
yeah. But anyway, until next time, I've been Avery. That's been Lily. We will be seeing you.